area in itself was as spooky as it comes. The world itself was still trying to get back up from all these dimensional mix-ups, with worlds, dimensions and timelines seemingly meshing together due to some unknown cosmic crisis, as plenty of anachronisms could be found all around the globe. Knights battling spaceships, cavemen interacting with Japanese idols, and many other such examples were easy enough to spot, as the world needed heroes to put everything back together, lest chaos would reign forever unabashed. That is why Rouge, Shanti and Zarak, three women who had no connection to each other, found themselves working together as some kind of impromptu team to work things out either through action or diplomacy. With them finding some successes and some truly bizarre occurrences to take care of, none seemed to be as eerie as their latest case, an abandoned and particularly creepy-looking funhouse. "Are you quite sure this is the place?" Rouge asked, looking at the abandoned building, its discolored facade only adding to the messy aura that it gave off. "It seems as if it would be haunted. Even if it's haunted, there's no reason not to explore it, especially considering the many people that were last seen around this place." Shanti replied to those words, not scared one bit, as she observed the place from top to bottom. "I've fought worse, and I even befriended a few zombies in my own dimension. There shouldn't be anything here that I can't handle on my own. We should be prudent nonetheless," Zarak replied, trying to keep a level-headed attitude toward their mission. "Who knows what lurks inside? All that we know is that there is some booming laughter coming out of there, as well as a sinister aura." As Zarak described a few of the symptoms of the problematic place, a laughter erupted from within, as if on cue. The voice, being raspy, nearly dry in its tone, did not assuage the stress that could be found in two of the three adventurers that stood before the fun house. With Zarak and Rouge being a little startled, it was only Shanti that seemed to keep herself in check, as she looked at the other two. "Well, let's get inside, shall we?" she suggested, motioning for the other two to follow her. We're all capable people. If whatever is inside is so insistent to scare us, it's probably because it's their only mean of defense. We just got to keep our wits and stay together." With this reminding Rouge of her adventures with Ryoma, Falcon and Aim, she began to return to a more natural stance, as she felt that Shanti was right. She had faced worse in her quest for the Power Stones, and this would all be fine should she stick with the others. She knew how to fight, and if she could kick or punch something, then there was no way that she'd lose. This was a different story for Zarak, though, who wasn't much of a fighter, acting more like a diplomat in the group. Even back in her own dimension, her dinosaur fought for her, so she did not have much experience in direct combat. However, with Shanti and Rouge being expert fighters, perhaps staying close to them would prove to be the wisest choice. With both following the half-genie heroine, they entered the funhouse, with the door opening automatically for the group. "Oh yeah, that's not creepy at all," Rouge said, joking around to try to calm herself, keeping her serious expression despite this sudden development. "It's probably magic. The Hypno Baron does this all the time, whenever I get into one of his lairs. The culprit inside probably knows how to cast a spell or two," Shanti explained, not even hindered by this situation. "You always say it's magic, though," Zarak proclaimed, keeping close to Rouge so as to be sure to stay safe. "Doesn't mean it's not the right answer. The world is messy enough, as it is, so of course magic would run rampant everywhere," Rouge added, following Shanty as they all entered the funhouse, bringing along their courage and determination inside. An empty hall greeted them, with plenty of posters, toys and dust being visible to them at first glance. The posters being barely visible, it seemed to suggest some kind of show, with the writing in the picture being half erased due to their ancient-looking aesthetics. The toys seemed to be puppets, dolls, mannequins, with some being of anthropomorphic animals, regular beasts and colorful characters, all made to look harmless, fun or simply creatively bizarre. With everyone looking at their surroundings, it was Shanty who broke the silence that had quickly established itself as she looked at a huge snake puppet, one purple and orange in colors, sporting a feather turban on its head. The puppets are probably going to animate themselves soon enough. If there are ghosts, then it would make sense that they could possess some of these lifeless things to try and stop us, like with this giant snake here. Then that means that there will be something to punch and kick, which would be fine to me, Bruce replied, looking at other puppets and mannequins so as to see what else could be thrown their way. Let's not get too hasty. We don't know for sure what is happening here, Zarat said, trying not to put too much thought into this one possibility. What if there are ghosts, but they try to attack us directly? We couldn't even touch them, if that were to happen, right? I have magical hair, so that would not be a problem. If it came to that, I would protect you both, Shanty said, trying to reassure the timid princess, as she tried to remove some of the dust on one of the posters. Doing so, it revealed a puppet coated in blue sporting a red cape and a little hat with a rainbow feather attached to it. Towering over a great many puppets, some of them erased due to the wrinkly appearance of the poster itself, it held symbols on its puppet arms, as it smiled mischievously. Greatest puppet show Earth, the greatest puppet show on Earth. That's probably what's written on it, Rouge said, removing some dust on another poster, as it revealed the same imagery, with the same puppet ever being present, yet one key difference was there, as it began to sport a mustache and other versions of the poster. There were also some puppets that were new to different versions of the picture, as if the cast began to get larger and more diverse as the show progressed. I somewhat have some trouble believing that a place filled with puppets could be problematic, really, Zarat began to voice out loud, her own fears somewhat dimmed down considerably, until it peaked again upon hearing another immense bout of laughter, followed by a sinister announcement. Greetings. Welcome. Bien bonjour. Please enter the premise, see the show and wonders of this delightful house of fun. With the same raspy voice prodding them to come along to an unknown place, a new door revealed itself in an unseen corner, as it opened up rapidly and violently, revealing a passageway to a mysterious new area. With the trio back on their guard, Shanty opened up the march, as she did not let this booming voice lower her determination and courage, with the other two walking along so as to give the half-genie some backup in case she would need it. The door led to a hallway, which itself led to another open door, as some feeble light dared them to penetrate in yet another puzzling room, the strangeness of the funhouse still ever present despite their bravery and their open mind. This all eventually led them down to a room filled with seats, empty ones, facing a stage that was settled up in some kind of Arabian Nights-inspired theme, with no particular country being represented more than in one other, the vague Oriental-like vibe being shown instead. Finding it strange, they were then once more startled by the voice which seemed to erupt from the stage once upon a time, in a town far, far away from here, with Shanti and Rouge getting on the stage to confront whatever it was that talked thusly. Zaret followed quickly, not wanting to be left alone in such an environment. Ready for just about anything, they were on the lookout for any trouble that would be thrown their way. A large snake ruled, bringing despair and devastation to the citizenry, as it demanded sacrifices and tributes on a constant basis. The large snake that Shanti had observed a few moments ago then emerged from the stage, its tail seemingly much longer than it initially was, as it began to slither, hiss and circle around the trio at a very fast pace. Too rapid for Shanti to whip it up with her hair, it began to speak in its own sinister voice so as to participate in this bizarre tale that was getting told. Oh, but what have we here? 3 heroines, ready to become mine to play with. I shall punish your rebellion, my pretties. Without any moment to take it all in, all 3 women were beginning to get coiled up, their feet and legs now against each other so as to ensure that they could not walk away. With Rouge punching the thick tail to no effect, Shanti did not seem to have any more success on her part, as she tried to whip the head of the snake, resulting in the puppet to dodge each attempt, as its coils got higher and tighter by the seconds. Despite the skills and strengths of the heroines, the snake was too cunning, fast and strong for them to contend with. But then, there was one more trick that the snake had in store for them, and now, since you 3 beauties have defied me, I shall make it so that you will never do so again, as I shall bring you under my terrible power. Understanding very well what it meant, the whole trio decided to turn around and look away, knowing what this could mean: hypnosis. With tales of snakes mesmerizing their prey being well known in many circles, the whole scenario foretold of this in an unsettled fashion, as they would certainly not play along. However, as they did so, they saw the puppet found on all those posters, carried around by a ghostly disembodied arm, as it floated in the air. Clapping its cymbals once, its eyes then turned into red swirls that seemed to grow in size and power at breakneck pace, as it looked at the stage and the women that could be found on it. Unprepared for this development, all 3 of them merely caught a glance of those red swirls, yet it was enough to lure them into looking further into them, effectively trapping their spirits and their attention toward the unending pattern of bright and warm colors caught in the allure of the snake as well as in its coils. The 3 heroines then began to get hypnotized, losing themselves in the seductive power of the snake, with the puppet getting behind the snake. It then began to move right and left, as the snake did the opposite, creating a bizarre balance that Shanti, Rouge and Zaret couldn't help themselves but follow the mustached puppet. Caught in a trance and in the narrative, their mind began to turn to mush, as red swirls replaced their irises as well, the hypnotic prowess of the narrator being far too powerful to resist. Just about to be enslaved and eaten by this terrible foe, the hero came in to save the day, as they knew the weakness of the dastardly demon sound. Then, following its own story, the puppet began to clap its cymbals once more, never letting go of the red swirls, as the snake began to waver and then slither away, as if defeated by such a meager effort. Despite the fact that they were now free of the snake and its terrible hold, the trio wasn't liberated from the hypnotic powers of the puppet nor from the narrative, as they stood there, still mesmerized and confused with the snake being defeated. The town began to joyfully celebrate its hero, as festivities began. However, all three heroines began to develop deep feelings for their savior, wanting to reward him in their own way. The tale, a web of manipulation and suggestions amplified by the stage and the voice of the puppet, began to truly englobe the three women, as they began to feel genuine gratitude, their own reactions and emotions twisting into those described by the unseen narrator. Caught in an area of power, one where the owner was mighty and near invincible, they could possibly have thought that they prepared themselves better, yet their own appreciation for the puppet, the show and the story had evolved into something positive already, prompting them to react accordingly to what was being said. First came Shanti, the mightiest of the three, a half-genie with a heart of gold and brutal hair. A talented dancer in her own right, she then began to seduce the hero with a performance that would be out of this world. To capture his heart, as best she could. It was her turn, as her heart began to beat slightly faster. Accustomed to danger and to dancing on stages or even through dangerous areas and tight spots, this one felt different, as the scenario told that she was trying to be sexy, to be seductive, as she began to go slower, giving a look at the puppet that said it all. Despite her swirly eyes, her expression still gave way to a charming little number, with her efficient and methodic motions giving way to a truly beautiful display, her belly sending waves, as her back arched a little to truly let the puppet see it all. However, she was soon followed by Rouge, the fortune teller. Not one to be left undone in such a competition, she tried to use all of her skills to show that she would be the one to properly entice our hero into her own arms. Jealousy began to swell in Rouge's heart, as she saw Shanti dancing so wonderfully, her heart into it, as she tried to beat her at her own game. While her profession wasn't that of a dancer, she was no slouch in that department, as she remembered that precious time she had performed Thunderbolt, in her most revealing outfit, as Silk World, as she turned and swayed beautifully. Trying to replicate the passion and the skills she had shown then, her own feet allowed her to turn, as her hips went into circles, her own knees almost invisibly pushing for wider and rounder motions so as to truly allow her body to speak eloquently of love and desire. Then came Zarak, the timid one. Seeing those two, her own fears and doubts were assuaged, as she tried her very best to make it so the eyes of the hero would settle down on her instead, hoping that her attempt would lead to comprehension and love. Zarak knew very well that the other two were far more talented than her with their dancing skills and techniques, yet she simply had to try. Her outfit wasn't the best for such a moment, yet she was serious enough to try and move her hips, trying to mimic as best as she could the movements that both Rouge and Shanti were performing. With all three still caught in the red daze of those endless swirls, they were then entrapped within the stage's setting, the words warping their reality and their perceptions, whenever it suited them, as they danced in the empty room. Watched by the puppet, who still went on to captivate them with its gaze. Ghosts, apparitions, and other ghastly creatures dared not manifest themselves, yet filled the place with music nonetheless, as it only added to the credibility of the moment, with the three women being as beautiful and charming as each other. To the noble hero, he quickly realized that he couldn't choose one instead. He went on to choose all three, dedicating his life to loving them equally, as they would be dedicated to loving him too. Reaching an equilibrium. With the town saved and the heroes getting their happy ending, it was time for them to go for other adventures, to help other towns in case the terrible snake would come back. Moving away from the stage, the puppet prodded Shanti, Rouge, and Zarak, as they tagged along, their eyes magnetically pulled by its eyes, as they could no longer defy it. Acting more like puppets controlled by strings attached to this other puppet, the trio disappeared behind the stage, with the curtains drawn on this news story that had dawned on this very day. The hall was empty of people again. Dust had gathered, with no one living there to take care of cleaning. The posters were still half covered with muck and hid the selling points of the funhouse itself, its shows. Each new additions, new settings and new characters overshadowed by time and people that forgot how great this place had been. Each posters and corners were dirty and left on its own save for one. A new poster, a new set and some new characters were there, promising a tale of heroes, of beauty, of exotic locales, and of terrible dangers. Beneath, the main players could be found, as three dolls dressed like different dancers could be found, all coiled up by a large and tall snake, ready to unleash its serpentine venom upon them who would save them. This was something to discover for those who would head to the greatest puppet show on earth.